welcome to Inside Out, a yoga therapy podcast with me, Jane.
And me, Sophie.
We're so happy to have you join us today on our journey into the science of stress. In the last episodes, we looked at habit and change, and this led us to the discussion of one of the most common underlying cycles of mental behaviour in modern life, and that is stress, leading to anxiety and overwhelm. Now, this is not something which is a unique characteristic of our times, but something that has existed in the human organism since we first evolved into Homo sapiens. It's an essential component in survival, and we aim to cover both the functional aspects and also what we can let go of. When we look at the Yoga Sutra and other ancient texts about the human condition and how to manage it, we see that stress and anxiety, just like every other human emotion and response, was very much in evidence 2,000 years ago. In this excerpt from Yoga for Women by Nancy Phelan and Michael Volin from 1963, the author cites a photograph from 1955, and what he describes is oh so familiar. Several years ago, an American magazine published a photograph showing a number of people waiting to cross the road at a New York traffic intersection. It was a fine summer morning, and there were many young people in the crowd. Yet every face showed unmistakable signs of tension, strain, anxiety, or impatience. This photograph comments more graphically than words on the effect of modern life on city dwellers. 9 out of 10 people, consciously or unconsciously, suffer from strain and tension, cannot find time to rest, and, when they do not know how to relax. Nervous complaints, depression, insomnia, headaches are common ailments. Constipation, indigestion, ulcers and heart conditions ruin many lives. People go about with stomach nerves tensed up, with faces contracted and frowning. Even in repose, their hands are clenched. When they go to bed, they lie in a screwed-up attitude and wonder why they cannot sleep. Others who do manage to sleep complain that they wake as tired as they were before. So, how on earth can we manage this epidemic? In today's episode, we're going to examine both the science and traditional ideas behind creating lasting change through yoga and introduce us to some simple tools to help in the journey from uncertainty and instability to strength and empowerment. So, Sophie, would you like to start with that then? just a little something.
Yeah, that was lovely. Thank you for sharing that. I think most people that I speak to are incredibly stressed, and they don't realise how stressed they are. When I think about stress, I usually get people to think that it can come in 4 different main formats. So this is just a little way of thinking about stress is, what's your mental load been recently? Have there been any physical loads on the body? Emotions. So have you had anything emotional going on? Are you processing something? And then spirituality. Are you connected to 1, nature, and 2, to yourself? Mm-hmm. And that's how I always approach spirituality is let's forget any other notion of what spirituality has been given to us as is. Are you connected to that which is bigger than you, nature? Are you spending time in nature? And are you looking up, as you say, at the stars or at the sky? And also, are you actually in tune with what is going on with your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own behaviours? When I usually say to people, if you could score your stress 0 being no stress, 10 being the worst possible stress, how stressed have you been for the last 2 weeks? It really catches people off guard. And they think, and then they say, oh, well, I've been about an 8 out of 10, as if that's a good result. like that, Yeah. And some people say, 25 out of 10, or it's usually very high. Mm-hmm. And the main thing I think that we wanted to talk about today was that stress makes anything worse. Any health condition that you are living with will be made worse with stress. So therefore, why are we not having a better conversation about the different types of stress that we're experiencing in our lives and what we can do about it?
Yeah, I totally agree. And you said something, wasn't maybe the last episode or the one before, about stepping off the treadmill of terror. And in a way, that's really what we want to help people to do, isn't it? In terms of stress, that there is like for a lot of people, it's an unconscious treadmill that they find themselves on, because it's not the natural purpose of the stress response that we're experiencing now. It's become really exaggerated and amplified, and people are being triggered into that fight and flight response over and over again, and not just exacerbating existing health issues, but actually creating other things, which, from having that level of hormonal release that's going on inside the body. So we talked a little bit, didn't we, about the traffic light system, or you did on the first module, but perhaps we could just very briefly, for people who don't know what the nervous system is about and what's happening, in a really simple way, just break it down for people into, firstly understanding what it's there for, which is, like I said in the intro, for survival and to keep us safe largely. And then what we are actually experiencing in our bodies and our minds and ourself when we go in either direction. So that idea of the brake and the gas and all of that. And then maybe we can look at how it is that yoga therapy and yoga practices can help us to manage that. Because I think what I see, and I'm sure you do, is people who are just running on empty. This idea of just going round and round and round and just pushing through, and then ending up with burnout, which we know is not great. So do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I think the simple matter of fact of it is that we are made up of trillions of cells, and these trillions of cells come together to build different systems of our body to ensure that we are going to survive. And usually where I start is just introducing the autonomic nervous system. So there are processes of our body that we are not consciously controlling every moment in every waking and sleeping moment of our lives. This is just a fact, isn't it? Our heart is beating. We're processing the fluids that we drink in order to make our systems efficient and effective. And we are pumping blood around our body. So the two sides of the autonomic nervous system, so think of this as it's automatically running in the background, is the sympathetic side of the nervous system, which you just referred to as the fight or flight response. Now, I always call this the I am stressed side of the nervous system. And this side of the nervous system is our body's doing what it needs to do to get through the day. So when we are stressed, we can have different types of responses depending on how we have grown up, our childhoods, what our learned behaviour has been in order to survive. So the example that I usually give is if there was a tiger in the room, we would all possibly have either a similar or a different response. So some people would fight. Their automatic reaction to danger being in front of them, to being stressed, to being threatened, would be to physically fight this tiger. Some people would fight in a different way. People fight with their tongue. So some people fight stressful situations by, making phone calls, making complaints, sending the email, battling for better care, for example, of somebody that you love. Some people would flight that situation, so they would physically run away from this tiger. Some people would try and fix the situation by coming up with a problem-solving solution to ensure that maybe the tiger's on one side of a fence and you're on the other. It's just a simple metaphor, isn't it? Some people would look to other members of their group. They would fawn and people please. And if someone said to them, you go over there and you fight that tiger, they go, oh, okay, all right, yes, I'll do that. Or, in a more Someone might say, go and pick up that stick, and they say, yes, okay, and they're following instructions and they're pleasing other people in the tribe. And then there's some people who literally would freeze because danger is in front of them, because there's a threat. They physically can't move their body because their autonomic nervous system has frozen them, and they cannot move a muscle. That's how stressed they are and how they receive and respond to stress. And then more recently, there are people who talk about the flop response, where because we're so stressed and we're so overwhelmed and there's danger in our lives, that we essentially just become exhausted and we can't move. We are just completely exhausted. And I think when you mentioned burnout, I always think of the person who gets through the day that they have to do, and then they get on the couch at night time and then they can't sit up. They're there for hours afterwards. Or the weekend comes. How many people do we know at the weekend who can't do anything because they're so exhausted? Mum and I often talk about this. When she was younger, her and her friends used to go to night school after work, and they'd learn Spanish or they'd do pottery class.
Yeah.
And there are some people who I know who do things, don't get me wrong, but there are a lot of people that I know who aren't doing anything with their evenings because they flop. They flop and they're exhausted, can't do anything in the evening, can't do anything in the weekend. So one side of our nervous system is the stressed, I'm in danger, I think I'm going to do something about it side of the nervous system. And then we've got this other side of the nervous system, which is called the parasympathetic side. Now, this is known as the rest and digest, or as you beautifully say in one of our episodes, the tend and befriend side of our nervous system. Now, every single human has got both sides of these nervous systems built in as that design feature to go, okay, well, that was flipping stressful. The tiger was here and now it's left. When the tiger was here, my heart beat quicker. The blood had to rush to my muscles, so my muscles got tighter, and I had to use the fluid in my body, and so I became dehydrated to make my senses sharper so that I could survive. But this other side of our nervous system is where the body goes, oh my gosh, thank goodness the tiger's got left, and I can now repair and renew at a cellular level. So we have this inbuilt mechanism for the body then to go seeking any inflammation and to then provide an anti-inflammatory response. And essentially, the main nerve that governs all of this is something called the vagus nerve. Vagus in Latin means the wandering nerve. It starts off down in the private areas, and then it connects into our digestive system, then into our respiratory and breathing system. Our vocal cords then goes up into the brain and branches out like a beautiful tree. And this vagus nerve is there to be able to go, okay, we were stressed, there was danger, there was a tiger, and now I'm going to move you into that other side so that you can replenish, recharge, and repair in order to be prepared for the next thing that's going to come along. And when I share this with people, I can almost see the light bulb going off in their mind. I can see the penny dropping when you go through the different types of fight, flight, freeze, fix, fawn, and flop. And the kind of points I usually have on a piece of paper, and they point and they say, that's me. That's what I do when I'm stressed. And so just so that I'm very clear, the tiger is now no longer in the room with us, but the email is from your boss. The fact that you're caring for somebody with dementia is the tiger. The fact that we have a job to do where we are expected to work harder, faster and longer, and then go home and clean our house, be a good community member, do this, try that, eat all the right things, exercise your body. It's this idea that our system functions are millions of years old, and we are being triggered into our fight or flight response in a different kind of way now.
Yeah. Thank you. Brilliantly explained. And I think that information is so powerful for people, isn't it? Just to understand that that is what's going on and that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your body, your nervous system responding in the way that it's primed to do. But unfortunately, we live in dysfunctional times with a lot of stimuli which are not natural in terms of the amount of input. Like you just said, the amount of input that any one human being gets in a day is probably more than a hunter-gatherer would get in a lifetime. Everything has speeded up so much. Therefore, it's inevitable that even in 1955, when I didn't think things were that fast, but obviously they were compared to more agricultural times and before that, when we were just hunter-gatherers, we didn't have that level of pressure, external pressure. And now it's kind of gotten, in a very short space of time, actually, maybe 20, 30 years, it has really accelerated massively, hasn't it?
100%. So I was 14 when I got my first mobile phone, and the only thing you could talk about at school was how many snake 2 points did you have? 3,000 listeners I had. They were just a brick, weren't they? And they were so minimal. And when you were speaking then, I was thinking about, I read something the other day that said, we weren't designed to be on 24/7. And, I suppose I'd say back in our day, you couldn't go to the bank at 11 p.m. You couldn't shop for your holiday at 1 a.m. You couldn't do your food shopping at 3 a.m.
You couldn't go to the shop on Sunday. I mean, because I'm a bit older than you, but on Sunday, there was nothing. It's like Sundays were just, like that Smith song, that every day is like Sunday. It was like nothing. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't buy anything. It wasn't very exciting, but somehow it was needed. That one day where you just had to kind of amuse yourself, and then come home for your Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. Everything is available now, isn't it? At your fingertips. And so the difference between someone who's grown up, and again, this kind of plays into the stress model as well, doesn't it? There'll be some people who were totally analog, like me, until I was like 32 or something. I don't remember when I got my first mobile phone, maybe in my 30s. Or first went on the internet, maybe. So for that time, I was totally analog, and then moved in. Suddenly, everything starts changing, and here we are. And then you've got people who were sort of a little bit in the next sort of generation, who perhaps teenagers when they first got their phone. And now you've got a generation who have grown up with this, and therefore they've grown up with everything that we associate with this amount of information, stimulus, pressure, comparison, just everything about it.
Yeah.
So it's hardly surprising that stress-related illness is at an all-time high. And so many young people are not in work because of stress-related illness or, mental illness. So I think it's even more important, isn't it, for people to get informed about what's happening so that they can start to take action and start to, in a really simple way, look at what your daily life can allow you to do, so that you're not just being a reactive organism, but as a human with a prefrontal cortex, you can actually make decisions and make choices about things you do. So, what you were saying about people not going to a night class or not using their evenings. It's like, and a lot of what this comes down to is, being quite focused on how much time you are wasting, allowing yourself to continue to feed into the stress. So yeah, if you're scrolling on your phone, you might not think it's stressful, but because you're thinking, oh, I'm just looking. But there's so much information coming through that is unhelpful. It doesn't have to be dramatic stuff. It can just be in the back of your mind, you're comparing, or you're thinking, oh, I need to do that. Oh, I'm not doing that. Oh, consistently feeding that deer in the headlights, really, isn't it? Rather than, being that quiet, steady, considered side of you where you're so relaxed that you can make decisions from a better place rather than making decisions from a place of reactivity, which is, oh, I'll do that. Oh, well, I'll just have that. Oh, well, I'll go for that then. You see people all the time go into a drive-in and then they're like, hello, can I help you? And it's like, and they haven't even had a chance to look at the menu. And then they go, oh, I'll just, and it's like everything is being lived on that sort of, that knife edge of having to make a decision quickly because everything's happening so fast. So it does require us to sort of make that effort to slow down, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other bit that I love chatting to people about is just a very clear understanding of the sympathetic side of the nervous system, which is this. Bad stress on the body, it makes your heart beat quicker when you've got the presentation to do, when your boss emails you at 7 p.m. and asks you to do one thing extra. And that'll make you have this fight or flight response. But the other interesting bit I find is that good stress on the body, so in science we call this eustress.
Eustress, yeah.
Eustress on the body also is a stress on the body. So when you're dancing, your heart's going to still beat quicker, your blood's going to go to your muscles. Now, I'm going to be really clear in saying, I'm not saying that good stress on the body isn't good for us, but typically, interestingly, in a lot of chronic and persistent pain patients, this is quite relevant to people that I've worked with. Because what I find is that they're going through something that they find tremendously like a bad stress in their perception. So, for example, work, if we just kept it simple. And then they say to me, but I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
So then I go, okay, so yeah, it's your Monday kind of thing. And then I get back and I watch my murder documentaries and say, okay. And then I watch the news. Yeah, true crime. Say, all right, okay. And then I'm scrolling on Instagram. All right, okay. So all I've heard there is if the body could speak, the body would say, so I thought there was a tiger in the room at work. And then I go to the gym and I'm assuming there's a tiger because we're running on a treadmill. So we're running away. Yeah. And then we watch the murder documentary. So I'm assuming something like negative is going on there. And then I'm on Instagram and I'm scrolling. And my point being is that I think we encourage in society people to be working tirelessly over 24/7. And then people are then getting in bed and expecting then that the body's ready to relax, feel safe enough to go to sleep. Because if you think about it, in that hunter-gatherer example, you are assuming that you are very safe to go to sleep. And even then, we've got mechanisms in order to perceive threat almost whilst we are sleeping. Yeah. That's why some of us get up early in the morning, some of us go to sleep later on at night, so that they reckon as tribes
we'd have had watch out people, wouldn't we? Yeah, exactly.
I love that idea of a chronotype, working as a team kind of thing. And sometimes I say to people, when they looked at the Hadza tribe and they assessed what percentage of their day they were resting and what percentage of their day they were working, what do you think it was? And then people always guess. And the answer is that when they followed this Tanzania tribe, that they were resting for 80% of their day. Yeah. So then you have to start to question, right? What madness are we living in if we're going from working all day to then feeling like we must be at the gym and we must be doing our exercise. And again, I'm not saying that good stress on the body doesn't provide stress adaptogens, which are really good for our mind and our body. I just think that this is the part where yoga comes in, because yoga's saying, okay, so you're doing your good stress, you've got some bad stress going on, But where are you spending time resting when you are physically awake? And that's where people are like, never.
Yeah.
I never rest with my eyes open.
No, that's right. And they also, I've seen this as well in some kinds of yoga class. They go to certain types of yoga class because it's a very active thing. And when they finish, they're not relaxing. They're just absolutely exhausted at the end of the session. So they do that relaxation thing and they go, oh, it's really great. But they're mostly falling asleep rather than doing something which is restful all the way through, so that it's a practice which is bringing somebody into that rest and digest, really getting the vagal brake to start to work, so that even when they're moving, they're able to bring a sense of restfulness to it. And that idea that from that, you can start to introduce mindfulness and a little bit more restfulness in the things you do in the day. I mean, obviously, you've got a pressurised job and you've got a lot to do. You work in a hospital in an AE department. You're not going to be going slowly. You have to do what you have to do. But that when you find those moments in your day where you can, if you can, and again, there's a lot of jobs where there isn't much opportunity to go slow, but it's to take that restfulness and to really try and drop it in through the day so that becomes more frequent rather than less. Because like you say, if you look at animals, any mammal, see what they do in a day, they spend most of the time just socialising, grooming, sleeping. Then when they have to go and get some food, they go and get the food. If they have to do a bit of mating, well, they will do a bit of mating. They'll look after the babies. They do what they need to do. But around that, there's a lot of sleep. And yeah, like you say, people, even when it comes to bedtime, they don't feel safe and secure enough to be able to go to sleep because everything in their nervous system is switched on. And so really understanding what yoga is, and what we've talked about in these sort of last few episodes, really, that rest is central to it, and the breath, that slowing down of the breath, because there's this whole idea that breathing is both voluntary and involuntary at the same time. It's an involuntary action which is taking place in the background constantly, but that we can bring awareness to it and it can become a voluntary thing. But that therefore, because that is happening, it connects to the conscious and the unconscious mind. And therefore it can help to, when we use the breath and the practices to slow things down, not only are we noticing consciously that we're slowing down, but it's having an effect, isn't it, on the nerve, on the sort of the ANS, the autonomic nervous system is being affected by that. And then we start to find it easier to switch into that rather than, pretending that we're relaxed. That thing of like, I'm fine, I'm really good. Everybody, lots of people, they do sort of fake that they're okay because they don't want to, again, maybe they're protecting other people. Perhaps it's, the fawn response. People do that, don't they? I'm okay. But underneath, it's like the swan. It's like, the swan's floating along, but it's paddling away underneath the water. And that's what most people are living like now, which is, so really don't go to a class with a banging soundtrack, which again is going to pump you up again into that, isn't it? The noise, the loudness. It's like people are afraid of quiet because of lots of reasons, but it doesn't have to be scary. If you're in a room in a safe space practicing yoga with someone who's really encouraging, although there might be some quiet bits, there's actually lots of time for you to have something to focus on, but something which is healthy and something which is soothing.
Yeah, and I think that's why we use the breath, isn't it? Because the breath is always with us, and the absorption into the breath is the anchor. That's the focus that we often use. And therefore, that means it's translatable to whatever you're going to go through in your life. And the vagus nerve, we can strengthen that like we strengthen a bicep, but you can't get a strong bicep without lifting weights. So I always say it's the same with the vagus nerve. In order to improve what we call vagal tone, which is measured through heart rate variability. So rather than the beats of the heart per minute, it's the milliseconds between each beat. And what we've found is that when you improve that, sleep quality can improve, length can improve, and therefore you spend more time in slow wave sleep, which is where we repair and renew at a cellular level. It can be supportive of symptoms of anxiety,
blood pressure,
all of these different health conditions. And of course, what I see most frequently, chronic and persistent pain.
Yeah.
If people are constantly in their good and bad stress side of their nervous system, the pain channels of communication from the body to the brain, from the brain to the body, afferent and efferent nerve pathways are heightened.
Yeah.
And when I just do simple practices with people, the breath, natural breath awareness, candle blowing breath, coming into the body, dropping into some kind of an anchor of, like you said, that quietness, quieting things down, the body can then tap into its internal medicine that it's been built with. It can release endorphins, serotonin, GABA, all these neurotransmitters and hormones cascade down, and then people get symptom relief. People get that, oh, my pain's just gone down a bit. Yeah, because your body felt safe enough in order to efficiently function to support you in your survival.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose, thinking about how people can bring things into their daily life, what you've got to meet yourself where you are. And I think that's really important, because if you are someone who's a highly stressed individual, it's quite likely that you are going at 1,000 miles an hour, and you find it impossible to sit still. So you can't go to a meditation class and sit. That's not going to happen. So it's like moving and breathing, doing something, but doing it a bit more slowly, just gradually slowing it down a little bit, doing a little bit of movement, then pausing, and then building your resilience, and strengthening that vagal tone by improving the way that you breathe. And then just things like choosing, what do you choose? Like we were just saying about the whole true crime thing. We've talked about it before, haven't we, amongst ourselves, this idea that true crime podcasts have become such a thing, and people seem to use them as a form of bizarrely relaxation. And, thinking about, what am I choosing to watch? What am I choosing to read? What am I choosing to invite in through my senses? At this time when everything is so heightened in terms of stress, can I choose something that is a bit more, steady, a bit more calming? I mean, you don't have to go off on a retreat and float away on a lotus flower or anything like that, but you can make little choices, can't you? Like we all have, even music. I'm sure most people, unless you're a death metal fan, most people have got like music that they like. This more makes them feel more chilled out, music that's more energizing. And again, it's like matching things to where you are at that point of the day to help you to wind down. The food you eat, and we'll get onto this in another, section of the podcast. But, what kind of food are you eating? Is it food which is what we'd call rajasic? And also when you eat and how you eat. What environment do you eat in? Because again, if your nervous system is ramped up like that, even if you're eating the most beautiful, organic, delicious food, you're not going to be digesting it properly, and it's not going to be having the effect that it needs to have in terms of creating energy and building cells and all of that. So it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? To understand what's going on in your nervous system, simple things that you can do to begin to bring it down a little bit, and also try and be around people who make you feel a bit steadier and a bit calmer. I always say that, there's some people that feel more reassuring. Not everybody's got that, but even just listening to something on the radio, listening to us on this podcast.
Yeah, shameless plug.
Gotta do it.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean though? Something which is going to bring you a feeling of nourishment and make you feel like it's okay. This is and that lovely. I always think about in a book by Deb Dana about the polyvagal theory. I think it's polyvagal theory for therapists, and she talks about this beautiful story, and I think I might have told it on the course. A little girl is drawing a picture, and she draws a picture of a whale, and the whale's got a sad face, and the mother says, "Oh, that whale looks a little bit sad," and she's like, "What do you think would make the whale happy?" And the little child says, "What if the whale could see another whale's face?" And so she draws another whale, and then she puts a smile on the whale. And it's that idea that we're primed to be in the company of others and to see safe faces. And that has a massive effect on how we feel. And we spend a lot of time not with real faces anymore, because when you're on Zoom, most people are looking at their own faces. They're not looking at anybody else, because they're like, "What do I look like? Do I look okay?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, even that's not natural, is it?
No, because you're not looking eye to eye, are you? You're not getting that safe connection. So just simple things like that, I think are really important. Anything else that you want to add?
Just asking yourself, what can I do to recharge? And the modern example is you plug your phone in every night, you charge your precious phones up every night. What are we doing to recharge ourselves? And it's different and unique for everyone. Meaningful activities, so subjective, aren't they?
Yeah.
But start there. What do I do to recharge my batteries? Oh, yeah, it is that friend that makes me laugh, or that friend that is really good at comforting me, or it is spending time in nature listening to the birds, or sitting in that patch of sunshine and with a cup of coffee and not having my mobile phone on. Simplify everything. Everything's so complex and convoluted, isn't it, nowadays? But if we just go back to basics and simplify, that's what our body's craving. Plenty of water, good food, good friends, time together, time alone, sit with your thoughts, journal. Yeah. All of this stuff is good for the vagus nerve, all of it.
Exactly. And we are living in difficult times, and I know it can feel hard to do that, but it's just, we have to do it. We have to try and find those good things and that community which we spoke about a little bit before.
And one thing I listened to actually earlier today, which gave me a bit of a Oprah aha moment, as she describes it, was there was discussing willpower on an Instagram reel, I think it was. And it was a couple of doctors debating whether, if you don't feel like you can do something, is it you, or is it the context of that decision-making process? And one of them said, prepare for what you think is going to be the worst possible scenario and have that backup plan in place. And what I mean by this is if you look 1 week ahead, I always get clients to think about 1 week ahead, and you can see that you're going to be stressed in work, that it's going to be a negative stress, that you want the good stress of your gym to strengthen your body and all of that good stuff that comes with that. And then you assume that some fatigue and tiredness is going to hit at some point. How can you fit into that, this backup plan of time out? And I thought that was just quite a nice way of describing it and thinking about it is, you know that you want to go to your netball on Tuesday evening, for example, but what can you do knowing that you're going to get back from work and you're tired? Could you have the meal prep planned so you've got the fuel to go to your netball? Could you have your clothes out and Or if it's that you're looking to meditate, are you the person who needs to get up and set your alarm and immediately do a 10-minute meditation, or put an alarm on your phone so that it goes off during the day and then it reminds you, I'm going to do 5 minutes of gentle breath work. I just thought that, do you know what I mean? It's quite nice, that, isn't it?
And it links back into the habit and change when we talked about that idea of, if you want to go for a run, you might start by just putting the shoes by the door and walking around, and then putting the shoes on and walking around the flat, and then do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like having a plan isn't a bad idea, I think. So thanks, Sophie. We've clarified that for some people and given them some food for thought. So if anyone would like to ask us any questions or tell us about how you find that quietness or that restfulness, how you bring that into your life, we'd love to hear from you. And thank you.
Thank you.
Inside Out, a yoga therapy podcast, is hosted by Jane Cragg and Sophie Coggins. To leave comments, ask questions and interact with the show, follow Yoga Therapy Podcast on Instagram. Please also subscribe, rate and leave comments wherever you listen to help the show reach more people. This podcast is recorded at QPod Studios in Oldham and produced by me, Matt Dean, with video production from Eddie Corteen for QPod Productions. For more information, visit kupod.co.uk.